The National Institute for Legislative and Democratic Studies, a bastion of democracy, committed to strengthening democratic institutions and promoting inclusive development. Nilds has cemented its place as the finest research and training institution that promotes and supports the development of dynamic, effective, and accountable legislatures and democratic institutions. Nilds is a capacity-building agency of the National Assembly and provides technical services to the legislature and other institutions of democracy in Nigeria and Africa. It was established by the Legislative Studies Act, March 2nd, 2011. The institute evolved from the Policy Analysis and Research Project (PARP), which was established in 2003 with the financial support of the African Capacity Building Foundation. For over 7 years, PARP's programs strengthened the capacities of legislators and legislative staff through the provision of requisite research and analytical support to the National Assembly.
We should be alert and be ready in case those questions are meant for your department or divisions. We should please ensure that we do the needful in terms of conduct of ourselves and receive the delegations warmly.
On January 26, 2018, President Muhammadu Buhari signed the Nilds Amendment Act 2017. It changed to the National Institute for Legislative and Democratic Studies, Nilds, and expanded its mandate to include the provision of capacity development services to other democratic institutions in Nigeria.
The idea is that once you are able to contribute towards capacity building of legislators and legislative staffs, directly or indirectly, you are contributing to the process of deepening democracy in the country. Okay, so at the initial stage, the emphasis was on the National Assembly. Okay, but with time, especially when the Nilds Act was reenacted in 2017 or thereabout, the mandate of Nilds was expanded beyond the National Assembly. It's now expected to also cater for the capacity building, and democratic needs of other democratic institutions like political parties, okay, civil society organizations, electoral management bodies, and so on and so forth.
Key mandate of our institutes, as I said, is to enhance legislative practices and procedures. You see, legislative business is a specialized business. It's one assignment, engagement that requires a lot of skills. It's not something anybody could dabble into. Don't forget that this country has been under the military intervention or interregnum for years. The kind of skills, the kind of mature experience, that the judiciary and the executive could boast of or could be proud of, is not there when it comes to the legislature. And therefore, we need to really develop the legislature. The lawmakers are coming into knowing how is law being made. How do we make law? What are the passage of bills? What are the processes? What are the procedures? So, over the year, through our induction processes, through our refresher courses, through our training and retraining, through our specific technical intervention, through our intervention in the areas of drafting motions and bills, we'll be able to avail our legislature all these practices and procedures. When you talk of stability today, either within National Assembly or within State Assembly, I think we have done so much in the areas of putting them through.
The National Institute for Legislative and Democratic Studies, Nilds, offers specialized academic programs on parliamentary studies, politics, as well as parliamentary reportage. Through this, the Institute has developed a new set of academic scholars on legislative practice.
Thank you, sir.
I hope you are aware that when you speak about the educational arm of their programs, that they have certificated courses, okay, beginning from diplomas, postgraduate diplomas, master's degrees. They have masters in legislative studies. I know they have masters in legislative drafting. I know they have, so I think there are about 4 different master's degrees that they run here that are certificated. And I think now they even have a PhD program in collaboration with the Federal University, Lokoja. So when you put all these things together, you realize that Nilds is contributing very seriously to human capital development, okay? Not just for legislators, okay, or legislative or parliamentary staff, but even people outside these organizations, political parties, civil society, they are coming now, okay, to take 1 or 2 of these programs. So by so doing, that is serious contribution to human capital development in the country.
Building the capacity of federal and state lawmakers as well as parliamentary staff is unarguably one of the key functions of the National Institute for Legislative and Democratic Studies, and it is pivotal in strengthening legislative effectiveness and institutional performance. This is a task the Institute takes with utmost responsibility, and it drives this through focused training programs, workshops, and seminars, as well as sharing of best practices and provision of professional support services. These are crucial because building the legislative capacity of federal and state lawmakers guarantee that these lawmakers enact well thought out legislations which would improve democratic governance as well as the lives of Nigerians. In the last 1 year, Nilds has organized retreats and seminars for federal lawmakers with the objective of enhancing legislative effectiveness. In 2023, it held a retreat for senators on fiscal policy and tax reforms in Ikorekpene, Akwa Ibom State. The Institute also organized a 2-day leadership retreat in 2023 for principal officers of the National Assembly in Uyo, Akwa Ibom State. The retreat was an avenue for principal officers of Parliament to brainstorm on ways of moving the legislature forward without working at cross purposes.
Let me say here that life is a learning process. I also want to say that if you look at the casualty rate coming from the 2023 elections, you will know that most of us senators are first-timers. Of course, some of them have come through the House of Representatives, but majority of us are products of new election. I think only about 28 out of 109 have returned as senators. And so the need to train them, to sensitize them, to learn the processes of lawmaking certainly cannot be understated. And so the Institute continues to train people, educate people. Of course, you are in the National Assembly and you have seen how some of our members do not even know the basic rules of procedure because they are new in the system. But you will agree with me that definitely in terms of presentation and the rest of them, there has been a marked improvement.
You know that senators come from different professional backgrounds. Not many of them are properly oriented in the very scientific way of lawmaking. So after one is elected into the Senate, for example, you are expected to be tutored on the basic methodologies of lawmaking so that you don't fumble when you have the opportunity of even speaking in the chambers. So the National Institute for Legislative Studies has it as a mandate to continuously, update senators and parliamentarians generally on the requirements of their work in terms of motion presentation, bills presentation, and the general conduct expected of a senator. So in my view, this is where Nilds has achieved its mandate. I remember that when we came on board, they took time to address us. A workshop or induction rather was held at the National Conference Center, organized by Nilds among other stakeholders in the Nigerian parliamentary system. And so they have achieved their mandate by so doing.
You want to understand that you cannot talk about legislative practice in Nigeria without the impact of what, the role that Nilds has played. For me, it's quite unique. It's quite innovative, quite complementary.
They are key to the process of lawmaking. And that is why it has been so nice, because earlier we use in text assembly where a bill is brought to the floor and is turned back for lack of due diligence. So if I'm bringing up a bill, I will have gone through the bill, I will have invited the drafter. Most of them have passed through these Nilds, Nilds. So they know how to do it. The ultimate aim is to reduce, if not to totally eradicate, lacuna in our laws. Some people will leave the substance of the law, will leave the merits of the law in the courts, and be fighting about the technicality. This thing is not good, but you now be looking for technicality because of the way and manner the law itself is drafted. So we want a clear departure of that, so that our judges also we have a breathing place, we have a breathing space.
Nilds also extend its capacity building responsibility to state legislators, parliamentary staff, legislative officers in local government area councils, legislative aides and journalists reporting on the legislature. In 2023, the Institute organized a 3-day training workshop for clerks and legislative officers of the local government area councils of Taraba, Borno, and Ogun states. The workshop was aimed at enhancing the capacity of the participants to strengthen local government administration and ultimately support balanced and sustainable development in Nigeria. Nilds also organized a 3-day capacity building workshop on legislative processes and innovative policy strategies for councillors of local government legislative councils of Lagos State. The objective of the training workshop was to equip participants with the necessary knowledge, skills, and experience needed to support the effective and efficient running of the affairs of the local governments. In the same vein, the Institute organized a 3-day capacity building workshop for legislative aides in the 10th National Assembly. The Director General of Nilds, Professor Abubakar Sulaiman, highlighted the workshop's goal, which was to enhance the abilities of aides to effectively support legislative processes and procedures.
They have taken us to law-making process, scrutiny, analysis, and what is expected of us from our various constituencies. And you should also know that before we are elected into House of Assembly, our people has confidence in us. That's why they supported us and gave us their mandate.
We came sometime last year or 2 years ago for a training program. We're from Benue State. And it was quite interesting and enhancing. It was effective. We learned a lot. It was a capacity building training, just like the one we're here today. And we learned a lot from them. We discovered that, yes, they really have the resource persons and the quality of staff that exactly knew, or rather what they sought. The way and manner they delivered their lectures and all that. We discovered that they were highly professional on any topic at all, as regards democracy, legislature, and of course management, effective management of the assembly.
The National Institute for Legislative and Democratic Studies, Nilds, has championed democratic values, principles, and norms through research, advocacy, and public engagement initiatives. In 2023, Nilds and the Chartered Institute of Personnel Management of Nigeria, CIPM, established a Memorandum of Understanding to enhance the consolidation of democracy in Nigeria. The objective of the MOU is to facilitate collaboration and the exchange of knowledge between Nilds and CIPM while contributing to the progression of democracy by providing support to legislative bodies across Nigeria. Nilds, in collaboration with Conrad Adenauer Stiftung, CAS, organized a roundtable on the role of parliaments in security sector reform and governance in West Africa. During discussions at the roundtable, the Director General Nilds, Professor Abubakar Sulaiman, called for a stronger partnership in West Africa against terrorism, insurgency, and transnational crime.
It is not immune to the present security challenges that have become increasingly complex and interlinked. The shared borders, histories, and economic ties among West African countries underscore the urgency of our collaborative efforts to address these challenges. In recent times, West Africa has faced the scourge of terrorism, insurgency, and transnational crime, presenting formidable threat to our collective peace and stability. Border security issues, including illicit trafficking and the movement of armed groups, further compound the complexity we must confront urgently. Internal conflicts, driven by various factors, pose additional challenges that require our immediate attention. The National Institute for Legislative and Democratic Studies, Nilds, is the only statutory agency of government in Nigeria established by an act of parliament to provide research, capacity building, and technical services to the Parliament of Nigeria and other democratic institutions in our country and across the sub-region. Some of these services we provide include in-depth sector-based research across various policy areas, annual supply and demand-driven capacity building programs, bill draftings and analysis, policy analysis and advisory, national diploma and postgraduate program including masters and PhD at all levels that has to do with not only security-related issues, parliamentary study, party politics, election management, and legislative studies.
To further promote good governance and strengthening of institutions, Nilds, in partnership with the Civil Society Legislative Advocacy Center, CISLAC, organized a 2-day workshop on reforming tax expenditure governance in Nigeria. The workshop was intended to identify and strengthen legislative pathways for reforming tax expenditure governance in Nigeria. Participants at the workshop unanimously advocated for prioritizing fairness, justice, and equity in tax management in the country. The National Institute for Legislative and Democratic Studies, Nilds, has also championed several legislative reforms and initiatives aimed at deepening democracy and good governance in the country.
Our duty or mandates is not just about the legislature, and that is why the name is Legislative Study and Democratic Studies. How do we deepen democratic values? How do we enhance democratic tenets? How do we promote the principle of democracy? That falls within the mandate of our institute. And it's just our institute in the country that by law perform that, or is expected to perform that role. And we have been doing it very well. One of the reforms we have brought in is in the areas of trying to establish a nexus between the legislature, who we believe is the epitome of democracy, with the people. The only signpost, let me use that word, or the only element you could see in a democracy that suggests that this is a democracy is the existence of the legislature. Where you don't see the legislature, there is no democracy. Because it's the only legislature that epitomizes that indeed people, this is the government of the people. If that is the case, therefore, how do we ensure that people elected are indeed doing what the people have asked them to do? So one of the things we have done in this over the years, among others, is to commence this issue of public trying to come up with a study at the point of coming into the legislature, at the point of the new legislative year. Before you settle down for parliamentary business, you need to know what are the expectations of the people. 5 years ago, I could recall, when I took over here, we came up with what we call public perception of Nigerian people vis-a-vis the expectations from the parliament. We came up with a study to gauge public opinions. What do we expect from the people we've elected? So that by the time they settle down for parliamentary business, they must have been seen carrying out, making law that are in tandem or in reflections to the yearnings and demand of the people. At the subnational level, you have this incessant political instability within the parliament. Leadership removal here and there. Today, this speaker was removed, another speaker was removed, the deputy speaker was removed. And we just discovered that it was because we don't have a standing order. A standing order that is very uniform. A standard standing order is not there for all the states. So we were able to partner with our donor agency, the Konrad Adenauer CAS, the German donor agency, organize or convene meeting of all speakers of state assemblies, came up with models, and today we have adopted a standing order that I can tell you is uniform to all state assemblies. So we have a uniform standing order now for all Nigerian parliaments, be it from the southwest, the northwest, the northeast, the southeast, the south, what you call it. So we have a standing order now. You cannot just, because of your sentiment or you have certain agenda, decide to follow certain procedure, within the chamber because you want to advance certain interests somewhere. You must follow the standing order as enshrined, agreed by conventionally by the entire Nigerian parliament. So I think it's one major reform that was not there before. And I want to believe in no sooner a time, that standing order will be launched by the Senate President in the presence of all the Speaker of State Assemblies.
Nilds is also deliberate about promoting gender equality, social inclusion, and diversity within legislative institutions. On August 23, 2023, Nilds organized a 2-day International Women's Conference aimed at fostering empowerment among women and shaping the governance landscape in Nigeria. It also held a 1-day gender awareness retreat in collaboration with UN Women and German Cooperation in Abuja, where participants urged the National Assembly to initiate a bill that would encourage the military and security agencies to be mindful of women and children during peacekeeping operations.
Some of our programs now are tilted towards inclusion. We're working with various organizations that are focused on youth and women, like Women in Politics. We have partners that we work with that are focused on some of these marginalized areas. Persons with disabilities, we have programs that we've been working. We work with some of these agencies in order to try as much as possible to improve participation or improve inclusion in the country. We also work with the parliamentarians as well, a lot, trying to look at some of the bills, ways that we can review the bills and make sure that we have inclusion in some of these bills. Women are included, persons with disabilities are included, and youth are included in some of our legislation. So the Institute is a think tank of the National Assembly, who are the lawmakers. So one opportunity that I think that the Institute can leverage on is we have the 10th Assembly now. So most of these gender inclusive bills, it's time to present them, and we've been working with some of these agencies to try and review some of these gender equality bills to present them to the 10th Assembly, and hopefully by working with the parliamentarians themselves, the lawmakers, and working with the CSOs, working with some of these international organizations, we're able to bring in or review these bills in the way that it's standard and include everyone. And once it's presented at the 10th Assembly, hopefully this time around, looking at the positive, the support from the National Assembly, the leaders of the National Assembly, the support they've made promises to support gender inclusion. We believe that if the Institute is able to push this with the partners and we have a passage, that would be something that would have come out from working with some of these partners as well.
In the 9th Assembly, in the Senate, for instance, we had about 9 female senators. In the 10th Assembly, other than all shooting the numbers up, now we have just 4 female senators. In the 9th Assembly, National Assembly, we had about 25 female out of 360. Very, very insignificant. But while we are thinking we are going to get more numbers of female elected, alas, in the 10th Assembly today, we have less than 16 of them, female lawmakers. That is not too bad. That is not good for democracy. We can't call that a democracy because from the statistic we have today, our women in Nigeria constitute 51% of the population. So our institute has championed that cause, that values of inclusion, inclusivity, bringing everybody on board in decision making. We have championed that cause. And that was why the first thing we did after the election of 2023 was for us to convene Women in Governance Conference, which was an international conference, bringing in female lawmakers from other African countries to share their experience with our counterparts in Nigeria.
Research and policy analysis on various legislative and governance issues are key endeavors conducted by Nilds. Within the last year, Nilds has championed more than 200 key research studies, policy briefs, and briefs of argument geared towards enhancing legislative governance and contributing to the nation's overall development. They include policy brief on the performance assessment of macroeconomic benchmarks of the 2024 budget of the federal government of Nigeria and the need for a supplementary budget for the 2024 fiscal year, addressing revenue leakages through reform of tax waivers, the Central Bank of Nigeria forex sales to BDC operators and the depreciation of the naira, insecurity and food security in Nigeria, taming the menace of rising insecurity in Nigeria and the need for state police, recurring cases of building collapse in Nigeria and the need for a legislative framework to curtail the situation, regulation of the construction and operation of slaughterhouses in Nigeria, Nigeria's rising misery index and the potential threats to national security, enforcing immediate reimbursement for delayed and cancelled flights, need for legislative intervention, turning promises into actions for persons with disabilities. Other policy analysis, lead debates, and research outputs are a brief argument on a bill for an act to establish the Nigerian Climate Change Fund, lead debate on a bill for an act to establish Satellite Towns Development Agency, a brief argument on a bill for an act to decriminalize the offense of attempted suicide in Nigeria, lead debate on the establishment of venture capital and startup investment, moving Nigeria's economy from a monolithic stance towards a robustly diversified type, lessons from Brazil and China experiences, alternative sources of revenue and the need to develop the chemical industry and sector, an issue for legislative attention, challenges of the informal sector in post-fuel subsidy removal in Nigeria.
Nilds happened to be the first, to the best of my knowledge anyway, organization in Nigeria to publish a book about what they call 25 years of democracy and development in Nigeria. Okay, over 800 pages. Is a massive book, okay, with contribution from leading experts, okay, in the academia, not just in the policy circle, in civil society advocacy circle, a lot of them making fantastic contributions about the journey so far, okay, journey of democracy and development in the last 25 years. I think it's one book I will recommend for anybody who is interested in understanding how we started this journey, how we got to where we are today, and alternative paths that we can follow in salvageization. But again, I think it's also important for me to highlight this important publication by Nilds on the governance of COVID-19 pandemic. Okay, not many people are familiar with that major publication by Nilds, and I think by every standard, it was a masterpiece, a major contribution on how the country should be prepared for emergencies, okay, of that nature, and what the government actually did in responding to those emergencies and actionable suggestions going forward in case we have such a thing in the future.
The National Institute for Legislative and Democratic Studies has collaborated with national and international stakeholders, including government agencies, academic institutions, civil society organizations, and multilateral bodies. At the core, these partnerships are intended to advance legislative and democratic objectives.
Yes, we have partnered with the Nilds for a while now, implementing activities that has been contributing to deepening democracy in Nigeria. The work culture in the Institute is what has ensured the success of our relationship. We're coming from the development sector where you have to deliver. They're coming from the public sector, which belongs to the government. I think for them to have been able to match the work culture and to work, excellently with us, contributed to the success. At the moment, we are working closely with Nilds to look at what we call PLS, post-legislative scrutiny,
which is a new way of working by Parliament globally. Post-legislative scrutiny just means taking a step or two backward after passing a law to look at the implementation and the result you are getting and see whether it is meeting up with the objective or if there are unintended consequences that needs to be addressed. As I mentioned, this is a new instrument that we are working with Nilds, to bring into the National Assembly, and the process is ongoing. We recently got commitment from the National Assembly, actually 6-point commitment to institutionalize the PLS as part of the process of work of the National Assembly. So the synergy between WFD and Nilds is working very well. It's actually deep. And in terms of contributing to the advancement of the legislative process in Nigeria, I think the thematic issues that we have been working on is ensuring that we are strengthening the legislative process.
But an institution charged with several critical responsibilities which are instrumental to the survival of democracy in Nigeria have encountered several challenges. However, Nilds is positioned to tackle these challenges head on.
Well, I think there's still much more to be done in terms of capacity building. Upon assumption of office, we've had something good in terms of capacity building, and then we've gone through various training, various workshops. We still continue. We've had conferences, seminars, but I think there's still much to be done in terms of capacity building. This job is about experience, it's about knowledge, it's about interaction. So for me, I'll give you a pass mark, but I think we still have much to be done.
For an organization of this nature, and given the expanded mandate, Nilds is expected to attend to everything, almost everything under the sun that has any connection, no matter how minimal, to democratization, to development. They expect Nilds to attend to those issues. When they started, it was just about the National Assembly. Then they were expanding, following the amendment of the Act in 2017. That reenactment actually expanded the mandate of Nilds to cover National Assembly, state assemblies, political parties, civil society organizations, electoral, name them. So what does that imply? Of course, more responsibilities, more resources are required. So, and I don't think the resources they have now can match the expanded responsibilities placed on them. So I know that as a research arm of the National Assembly, I know the National Assembly is doing its best, but I know the situation can be better. So I think funding is one of the major challenges that we talk about.
The issue of getting some donor agencies and NGOs to buy into what Nilds is doing. It's not easy. People have this notion, once you are a government agency and you are charged to perform certain duty similar to what NGO and CSO perform, they tag you, you are stigmatized. As you don't have a mind of your own, they are an instrument in the hand of government. So that misperception coming from the informal political structure, the NGO, the CSO, even to a large extent the journalists. But that is not news. So when they want to work with us or want to partner with us on any issue, that this may can we work with Nilds? Can we do it? You know, they are government agency. And the same thing applies to some of the foreign donor partners too. Oh, this one is government agency, can we work with them? Can we drive this agenda through them? We have been having that issue with them. A lot of skepticism, you know, arising just because we are government agency. But we have been able to carve an inch for ourselves, trying to be relatively independent on what we believe is in the good interest of the country.
There are also opportunities to take the institution to the next level.
When you talk about opportunities, I think one, it is important to know that I think Nilds is the first organization of its kind, not just in Nigeria, in the whole of Africa. I'm not sure where you have any other country where this kind of organization is replicated. I think it is very, very, and it has created a kind of opportunity in the sense that many other parliaments across West Africa, even beyond West Africa, I'm aware Uganda Parliament, they have been here on a number of occasions. That of Somalia, they have been here. Ghana, Liberia, they have been here for different kind of specialized trainings in different aspects of legislative governance. So I think that is an opportunity in itself. Then secondly, when you bring it back to Nigeria, National Assembly, Nilds is not established just to cater for the needs of the National Assembly. They also cater for the needs of state assemblies across the Federation of the 36 states. And I doubt if there is any state assembly in Nigeria who has not at one time or the other time been here for one kind of training or the other. So the point I'm making is that the market is there. I don't know whether market is the right word to use now, or the clients, so to say. They are out there, nationally, subnationally, and even internationally. So I think the opportunities are there for Nilds. So, and I think Nilds has been trying as much as possible, especially under this current leadership of the Director General, Professor Sulaiman, to, take advantage of those opportunities, the wide market that is out there.
The attempt at ensuring that democracy transcends, goes beyond the national and the state and goes into the grassroots, is what we are looking forward to. And I'm sure that Nilds is already prepared, to be able to support the legislative process at the local government level when we become ready for that. So if we get Nilds to be able to do that, we are going to be deepening democracy more. And I think the relevance of Nilds to the process is going to become more and more obvious.
The Senate President, who is the chairman of Nilds Government Council, was there about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And I'll just use his word, that this institute Nilds is Nigerian Harvard and Oxford. Is Nigerian Open University. So that's visionary. That's inspirational. That's a goal setting. What we want Nilds to be is to be the Harvard of Africa. Is to be the job options of Africa. Is to be the Cambridge of Africa. And we have begun to do that. Looking at the areas of our scholars, looking at the edifice, this edifice you cannot see it anywhere in Africa. Looking at the content of the edifice in terms of the library, well-equipped library, facilities, looking at our information units, looking at the areas of our production in terms of research output, You can't get it better anywhere in Africa. We are visionary. The leadership has a focus. They have a vision. And the vision is to take you to where such global institutions I mentioned have. And we have everything it takes to take it there.
On May 25th, 2023, former President Muhammadu Buhari commissioned the permanent site of the National Institute for Legislative and Democratic Studies, Nilds. This ultra-modern infrastructure enables the institute to carry out its mandate of building capacity among legislators at the national and regional levels and foster collaboration with other organizations and international institutions. It boasts of a convention center, library, lecture halls, maintenance and service structures. Since the completion of the Institute's permanent site, several key government officials have inspected the facilities, describing it as top-notch.
I don't have any doubt that your leadership here is improving democracy in Nigeria. For the management staff, the consultants and the graduates of the Institute, I will say kudos. You have been imbued with very high intellect. You have been given the best of education. It's very clear that if Nigerians knew what we have in Nilds, and that we don't need for certain either state houses or assembly or certain committees of the legislature to travel to Harvard, to travel to Cambridge. This is our own Cambridge, this is our own Harvard, and we are prepared and well equipped to do your best for the country.
For the Director General of the National Institute for Legislative and Democratic Studies, Nilds, Professor Abubakar Sulaiman, whose pragmatic, innovative and dynamic leadership has steered the Institute towards a path of excellence. Nilds is positioned to be a world-class educational and training institution which will contribute to strengthening democratic institutions and promoting inclusive development in Africa.